Looking for a job is never easy or fun, but if you're a senior level executive, it can be particularly challenging and oftentimes demoralizing. You've got expertise, experience, and that all important work ethic. Yet it seems like the supply of leadership jobs has evaporated. Suddenly, that once valued maturity that kept businesses on track and helped them avoid potential pitfalls now makes you seem old, a workplace pariah. I'm Jane Singer, and welcome back to A Seat at the Table, where we sit down with industry leaders, innovators, and entrepreneurs to find out best practices that will lead us to greater success. Meet Darcy Bevelaqua, a career coach who specializes in helping senior executives transition to their next career role. She parlays her former experience as an HR manager at two Fortune 500 companies to help people over 50 find great jobs that pay more, value their contributions, and re energize them about their careers. On this episode of A Seat at the Table, Darcy will be sharing how to overcome typical obstacles senior executives face when job hunting, tactics for more effective networking, and uncovering job opportunities that might be hiding in plain sight. So let's sit down with Darcy and jumpstart our next career move. The reason why I think it would be fabulous to have you on this podcast is that you do seem to focus on helping people who are over 50 find new employment. So many people I know have lost jobs recently. There's been a lot of cutbacks in companies, restructuring. And, there's people out there who are good people, talented people, and are looking to now, after many years of not being unemployed and looking for a job, they're trying to figure it all out. And it's not that easy when you're sort of out of having to do that.
Well, and the marketplace has really changed because most of our friends, or most of people 50 plus, have always had a job. And the way they went from job to job was a friend of theirs said, hey, would you like to come where I am? We're looking for somebody like you. Let me introduce you to my boss or my other friends and we'll get you a job. So most people that we know have never actually looked for a job other than when they first got out of college.
Exactly.
And then they took whatever they could find.
Yeah, that's so true.
And so there's not an understanding of what looking for a job looks like. And even if you look for a job, I would say more than 5 years ago, the market has changed so much that the ideas of how you look for a job then and opposed to how you look for a job now have really, really changed. So the first thing to think about is when people are looking for a new job is to go back to who am I and what am I really strong at? And one of the easier ways to do that is actually interview your friends and your business associates and say, hey, if you were going to summarize what you think I'm really best at, what my unique skills are, what are they? Because other people are better at synthesizing who you are than you are at doing it for yourself because you see yourself in all the complexity. And pretty soon, even after maybe 5 interviews, you'll see real patterns that show these are your really great skills and this is where you should focus because this is where you're unique in the marketplace. And the things that are really unique to you, that are your best at, you don't notice because they're like breathing. They're such a part of who you are by now that you are totally invisible and you think everybody does it like this, but they don't. You do it like that. And those are your special skills and your special sauce. And so the best place to start first is, what am I really good at? What am I passionate about? What do I get excited about? What would I even want to do if somebody didn't pay me? Because those are the core strengths of where you should be headed. And trying to fit yourself a square peg into a round hole because the job title sounds familiar or something like that doesn't really work effectively. It's more important to understand who you are and what you can really contribute. Once you're clear on that, then it's time to go out and start talking to people about crafting stories for what have your previous successes been? How do you really like to work? What is an example of where you've really accomplished something significant? So people can understand who you are and what you're really looking for. And there's a big hidden job market. So most of the stuff you're looking at LinkedIn and other places may or may not be real jobs. So the reason that people get frustrated is they apply maybe 50 jobs and they don't hear anything. So it's actually better if you're senior to network and to talk to real people in the industry and say, these are the kind of skills I've got. This is what I really love to do. This is what I'm particularly good at. And ask their advice about what kinds of companies are looking for people like that, or what kinds of places are doing that kind of innovative work that need your help.
I think that's such a great point, and I really like the fact that you suggest that people ask other people who they've worked with what they think are their greatest strengths, because you're absolutely right. You really don't see yourself that way, and you take a lot for granted, as you pointed out, that you just assume that everyone can do it, or the things that you do well, you assume are easy for everybody, when oftentimes they're not. Sometimes the stuff that you can do is something other people struggle with, and they'd be happy to have someone around who could actually take that off their plate. I think that when you talk about networking, wow, it sounds easy, right? But when you actually sit down to go and do it, it's difficult for a lot of people because it feels sort of, I don't want to say sleazy, maybe that's an old term, but it's like you're calling up people and you're asking them for okay, if you can ask someone who you know for advice or something, but beyond very close people to you, it has sort of that weird feeling that a lot of people feel very hesitant about. Um, what do you suggest people do? Like really practical, actionable kind of advice?
So when you're trying to network, you are not asking for a job. You should not be. What you should be doing is exchanging information and building relationships. And you can't do that through one call. So the first thing you want to do is figure out, what do I have in common with that other person? And instead of asking for them for a favor, you want to do a favor for them first. So you might say, gee, I noticed that you have a lot of experience in this area or something like that, but might you also be interested in some place like this? I have some people I could introduce you to that might give you more exposure to those areas, or might be able to be a good sounding board for you to be able to figure out what your point of view is. So you're trying to, again, create a relationship by you're doing something for the other person first, then they're going to do something for you. And not say, please give me a job, because 90% of the people you talk to can't give you a job. It's not that they don't want to help you, but they can't give you a job. And if you ask that, it makes both people feel uncomfortable. So instead, think about, what is my area of expertise? What is this person's area of expertise? How can my expertise help them? How can their expertise help me? So that you're asking for things that the other person can help you with, and you're helping them with their career.
I think that's a really good approach, and I think that you're right. In a sense, we went from being perhaps our generation of not wanting to ask to maybe the next generation after us asking for everything and not feeling that you ever have to give back. So you have two ends of the spectrum, and we have to sort of, as you're pointing out, find that middle ground where it's sort of a give and take kind of a situation. Now, assuming that you've reached out to people and you've offered them some kind of help or something that you could do for them, and you've made a connection, how do you, in some way, then transition that into letting them know that you're looking for work without it looking like the only reason you really reached out to them is because you're looking for work?
Well, what you should honestly say is that you're thinking about changing your job, and you might ask them some advice about, if you were in my situation, what companies in our industry would you look at and why? I mean, people have experience at other places you may not have, and they could give you some insights that could be very helpful. And so I think it's okay to be honest, but ask them questions where they actually can give you a real answer and they can actually be helpful, not questions where they can't give you a job and then they feel terrible that they couldn't assist you. And you can even ask them, do you see coming forward, and how important are they going to be in the future, so that you're, again, understanding where the marketplace is going from the people who are in it every day, and being able to figure out where you fit in that new dynamic, so that you can easily position yourself. You know what companies you want to talk to, you know what your brand positioning might be, and you can test it with other people that say, do you think that this is where it's going? Do you think this is where it's going? How would you rate this as in terms of importance in the next 3 to 5 years? Who's doing a good job in these areas? What are they doing you think is exceptional? And then when you're writing about it, you want to be synthesizing all the data you're collecting from people and showing that you're keeping active in the industry, that you have an industry point of view, and that you're keeping up with what's going on. And so that people look at you as, oh, I know that you're current with what's happening in the marketplace, and not because the market's moving so quickly. Just because you were active a year ago doesn't mean that you're relevant anymore.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, in some industries, there has been a real contraction in terms of number of jobs available. how does somebody try to say, okay, well, I'd love to stay in the industry I'm in, but perhaps I need to expand beyond that, and I'm willing to do that. But then on the other side, employers are looking for someone. Typically, they want someone who's as close to exactly what the job description is. So they'd love to get someone from another company that's as close as possible to exactly what they're trying to fill. How do you cross that divide, especially in a day and age where typically everything's an online application? I mean, it's difficult to be able to express yourself in the same way that you used to.
That's true. So what you want to do is think about, how do my skills translate to the new company? One of the things that you can do, obviously, if you're switching a bit, is you bring a different industry perspective. And if everybody on the team has the same perspective, they won't see they'll have the same blind spots. So the advantage you bring to the table when you're in the conversation with a company is, I've noticed the following kinds of areas where I think there's growth opportunity for you that you may or may not be working on. So you're actually trying to help them move ahead and show that you can see things that they may have missed because of your previous experience. And also, because you tend to have more experience, you can say, I've done these kinds of things before, and give specific examples where you've done them in different industries or different places. Usually, older people have better communication skills. So the idea of mobilizing your team and getting them on the same page and getting them working together, you are usually more effective than some of the younger people are. And because you've seen chaos many times before and adjusted to it, you can honestly say, I'm used to this kind of chaos. I don't find it disruptive. I'm able to kind of help my team focus on what's important, keep their spirits up, and keep them moving in the right direction. And then give specific examples how you've actually done that. So companies see you not as old and out of date, but flexible, willing to adjust, being able to see around the corners that other people may not see, being a strong communicator, being a strong leader, and really helping the rest of the team come together to work together effectively to fight whatever the competition or the marketplace is in a new way so that the company can grow.
I think that's a really good point. I know a lot of people feel that I think there is too, actually, ageism in the workplace.
There is a
More so, I would say, in the U.S. I'm American, so I'm not throwing shade at the U.S., but I mean, let's be honest. But certainly even worldwide, there's that sense that companies want to always hire as young as possible, but not recent graduates. So it's hard if you're a recent graduate, but they want a very young employee. And in some cases, there's a host of reasons, but some people feel that perhaps they're afraid if you get an older person, the salary requirement might be higher, or if they're willing to take a lower salary, they're just going to be disgruntled. So they'll take the job because they need a job, but then they're not going to be happy because even if they are willing to accept a lower salary, in some cases, people are just like, well, I realize things have changed and I'm fine with that. But how do you cross that bridge when you're talking to a company and eventually it's going to get around to it, either directly or indirectly, of having to get that on the table, even if they don't bring it up? It's something that has to be discussed and dealt with. How would you deal with that?
Instead of waiting for the company to bring it up, you should bring it up as the candidate and say, I know you probably have some concerns because I'm older, but here's the advantages of what I can bring. I've seen these situations before. I've dealt with these kinds of things before. I'm really good at effectively managing my team. So you, my boss, can focus on the other strategic areas that are also important to you, because I can run my team effectively and manage it day to day, and you won't have to be interceding. And I am flexible enough to understand that today's direction may not be the one that we're doing next week, and I can mobilize my team and keep them excited about moving forward. So instead of running from the issues, address them head on so that your boss feels like, you know what, it'd be nice to have part of my department run itself and I don't have to pay attention to it, because I do have a lot of other strategic issues I need to deal with. And if I could get part of it running almost by itself, then I could focus on the other things that are still going to be needed in order for me to be successful. So focus on how do I make my boss really feel that I can make them successful, not just myself, but them, so that they feel comfortable at hiring me because they realize we're a team, and as a team, we're stronger than without me.
I like the way you framed that. And I think that's really important. It's perspective, really, and oftentimes the person who's hiring isn't really thinking about it like that because they're just thinking about the very specifics, right, that they need to get done by the person who they're looking to hire. And I think that being able to talk about some of those soft skills and being able to point out, I'm not just getting the job done as anybody might who you hire, but I'm going to actually get it done without you having to constantly have so many things coming on your desk. I think, I mean, I know myself, that's golden to have somebody like that.
Right. And so you have to really put yourself in the shoes of the hiring person and say, what is it that they want from me? And how can I deliver? The other thing that people forget is you have to be enthusiastic about the job. If there are two candidates and they're equally well qualified, but somebody sounds enthusiastic and excited and can't wait to do it, people will choose that person. So remembering to be enthusiastic and excited about the opportunity actually matters. You just because you have the skills and you can do it isn't going to be enough. You have to be able to connect with people and have them feel like you want to be there. You're excited to be there. It's going to be fun. It's going to be lucrative for everybody in the team.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And we often don't think about that. In fact, sometimes people are trying so hard to, in a sense, big themselves up and seem professional and seem that, oh, I do this all the time kind of thing, that they err on the side, like you say, of seeming a bit too distant. And let's face it, you're hiring somebody, you want someone who's eager to get on the job and is pumped up about it. Um, you don't want someone who you feel you have to beg them to do the work.
Right. If you're phoning it in, I'm not interested.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. Another thing that's come up in recent years, I don't know if you're seeing it or maybe it just gets a lot of headlines, but not really that frequently being done, and that is the idea of fractional, whatever that may be, like senior positions that are being done as fractional jobs. How are you seeing that?
There are a lot of opportunities for fractional people. So honestly, I feel like people, there's certain personalities that do really well at fractional and some that don't. So again, go back to your own skills to figure out what really motivates you. If you really just love learning about your team and growing people, then a fractional probably isn't going to be a very good success for you. If you're good at sales, if you've been a consultant and you know how to jump in and jump out, you're probably more likely to be successful as a fractional. But if fractional works for some people, consulting can work for people. But again, it's a style issue and it's how do you like to work? What is your what makes you effective? I think people need to be a little bit more open than they used to be. In general, there's more opportunities with the smaller companies than there are with the really big ones. And people normally think, oh, I'm going to go in the United States to a Fortune 100 company because they're brand names and my friends will be impressed. That's actually not the case anymore so much. You might be equally as happy or happier at a mid-sized company where you're going to have a bigger impact and you'll have more senior management influence. So I would say, do not set your eyes on one type of company. Be more realistic and think about where can I make a difference and be open to ideas with mid-sized and smaller companies because you might just be a perfect fit in a place like that and pass that by because you didn't think about it.
I agree 100%. And I also see that as well. You have a lot of companies, like you say, mid-sized companies, no famous brand recognition. You'd never heard of them unless you'd actually worked there or knew someone who worked there. And yet they're good, solid companies. They're great places to work. They don't have a lot of the complications, you might say, that a corporation could have when you have a gigantic hierarchy that's spread all over the world. Opportunities to grow, a lot more flexibility in many cases. So I 100% agree. But how do you find a lot of those companies? That's the thing. Because they don't have that level of brand recognition, they sort of fly under the radar in many cases. How do you sort of ferret them out?
Well, there's two primary ways to ferret them out. One, of course, is you can do online research and ask who are the companies in this space, and you can use ChatGPT and other online, and they'll give you some lists.
Okay.
Two, join your industry association and become active and ask people there because there's probably lots of members of the association that are not the ones that everybody talks about that could be good opportunities for you. So you need to be a little more open. And then honestly, if you're really an expert in those areas, start posting comments and articles on LinkedIn about where the market's going and what the problems are that the mid-sized companies have, so that the companies that would be interested in you might see what you're posting and would be more interested. And then when you have discussions with other people in the industry, say, what smaller companies do you think are doing a good job in this particular area? Who has done some innovation lately? Or who has done some mergers and acquisitions lately? Who's growing particularly well? Who's struggling? Because even if a company isn't growing, sometimes going to a struggling company that's still financially stable is a great opportunity, because they need brains, they need expertise, and they may not know about you, but if you can find them and pitch them about why you'd be good. And lots of times the smaller companies are nervous about hiring people. So I would say be flexible and say, why don't we start with a consulting assignment for 3 to 3 months for me, just to help you come up with 5 new ideas to grow or something like that in the next 30 days based on what I can learn about you. So that you gradually getting introduced to each other, you get a chance to kind of talk to each other and get to know each other and see if it's a good fit for both of you. And frequently it is, but that will take the risk out of it for you as the employee and for the hiring company, because then they know, oh yes, this is the kind of person that could fit in well here. This is the kind of person that can contribute to our environment. This could be mutually beneficial.
That's such a fantastic idea. I really love that, because in a sense, it works for both sides. If you go and say, let me do this for a fixed period of time, not tremendously long, but long enough to actually move the needle, you're giving them the opportunity to end something, because it does have an end, assuming it doesn't work. So they're not tied into this complicated, oh my gosh, if we hire this person, it doesn't work. The risk factor is lower, right?
That's right.
I mean, I know myself, I hate to have to lay someone off or fire them. Um, it's just awful. Even if they're doing a bad job, you still hate to have that conversation.
That's right.
And certainly you hate it more when, there's all kinds of legal ramifications that could be part of that and anything else. So to be able to have a contract that says 3 months and that's it, and we both signed and agreed to it, and then, of course, if you like the person and they like you, you can always continue it. I think that's great. It gives the company that comfort zone, right? It limits risk. And on the same side for the person, they can feel more relaxed about taking something that I don't know if I want to work for this company. It's like, well, it's only 3 months, right? So they're not in that situation of feeling that they're signed up, for the long haul. It's good. Everyone can test each other. I think that's fantastic.
So, I think the whole mindset of I have to have a job with a big company that's permanent is a fixed mindset nowadays. And
Yes.
You should be flexible about how you think about what is my future. And you should be looking at multiple options and not lock into one right away. And the more flexibility you can have and the more options you can look at, the better it will be for you and for the hiring companies, because hiring companies are in a difficult position these days. All the tariffs that are going on, at least here in the United States, international visas have gotten to be ridiculously complicated. So the hiring companies have many barriers that employees don't even recognize. I mean, I say, well, I want to be remote and I want to do this and I want to do that. And then they get rejected. And I go, well, even if you're remote, the company's legally required to provide you with medical insurance. And if you're the only employee in that state, it's too expensive for them to get medical insurance for one employee.
Such a good point.
Hire you even if you're qualified. And it's not your fault, but it's the way the American system is set up. So sometimes you just have to be more flexible to do things in a way where you can either ask questions so it works for both sides. You're trying to find a mutually beneficial fit for the hiring organization and for the potential employee.
That's really, really a good point. I actually hadn't thought about that, because you're right. For companies that are hiring someone who's U.S. based, the whole insurance debacle, putting it nicely, is phenomenally complicated. If you're hiring someone elsewhere in the world and you're based elsewhere in the world, you're really lucky. But if you're operating under the U.S. system, yes, that is a massive consideration for both the person who's applying for the job and for the company. It's very good you brought that up. I think a lot of people, myself included, like I said, hadn't really thought about that.
Well, and people think they want to work remotely because it's easier and then you don't have to commute. But one of the problems with working remotely long term is out of sight, out of mind.
Yes.
And if you really are a senior person and you're a change agent, you can't really be effective remote all the time. You really have to be involved with the other senior leaders. You have to be involved with the pulse of the industry so that you're keeping up. So you are at the right strategic inflection points and you understand what's happening. And if you're a junior person, sure, you can probably be remote. It doesn't matter that much. But if you're a senior executive and you're 50 plus, being remote is much more difficult and probably isn't going to be as successful.
Yeah, and you're right that being out of sight, out of mind, 100%. You're not there when certain conversations may be taking place. You're not literally visible when it comes time to perhaps giving somebody an opportunity to do something that could then be parlayed into something bigger and better. So I think you're right. It's really you're taking short-term wins for long-term risk and potential loss that a lot of people haven't thought about. And yes, of course, it's tempting to want to work from home, especially if you have a long commute. I mean, who wants to do that? But realistically, yeah, you're going to pay a price for that sooner or later. I think even junior people will find, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's a bit more difficult to move up when perhaps some of your colleagues are in the office and having regular contact with people who are above them and building maybe a better or stronger relationship.
I would agree. It's also much easier to train junior people.
Yes.
I would have junior people in the office, then you could go around and talk to each person individually and figure out where they're struggling and, kind of point, here's an example of how you could do this better. This is really great work over here, but this could be a little more focused. So let's talk about it. And, people I know that are junior complain because their bosses are like talking to them like that. And I said, if your boss is criticizing your work, that means they care about you and they're trying to get you up to speed and promoted. If they never talk to you and they don't give you any negative feedback, they've already checked out and your career's over.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
They're just keeping you on until
that is negative, but it's not.
100%. I think it's really a pity nowadays that, in a sense, everything's become overly digitized. And so therefore, people aren't getting that kind of input, right? Whether it be on the job coaching or even being told, like you're saying here on this podcast, how to interpret that kind of feedback, right? That's actually a good thing and that you should welcome it. You should probably ask your boss from time to time, are there areas I could improve just in case there's something they're thinking about, but they hadn't gotten around to telling you? It's best to know that before they get really angry that you're doing something wrong. Best to find out early on, is there areas that I maybe, could improve on or doing better or stuff that you'd like me to do that I'm not doing?
Well, and most employees, when you actually spend the time to help them and show them what better looks like, they improve so quickly. The average person really wants to do a good job. They're not just sitting there taking up space. And they may not be used to it because they grew up in a generation where nobody got criticized. But by giving constructive feedback, and you don't want to hurt their, self-esteem, but you want to say, you're doing a great job here. This is really good. This could use some improvement. Let me give you an example of better. And I would like you to try and do this for next week. And we'll sit down and talk about it. And I can give you feedback about how quickly you're improving. And so giving employees feedback about how fast they're improving, I think makes them feel pride at what they're doing and accomplished, because it's pretty hard sometimes if you're getting no feedback to tell if you're doing a good job or not.
Absolutely. I think that is something that's been lost during the work from home era, you may say, is that you're not getting that feedback because you're not there. Then the supervisor or, whoever your senior isn't thinking about that in that way. They're just looking at what the deliverables are. And then either it's okay or it's terrible and it needs to be fixed. But it isn't, like you're saying, that day-to-day kind of spontaneous coaching or feedback that you would get in an office. And even if you're on a Zoom call with them all day, which some companies do, right? They're doing a lot of whether they're using Zoom or something else, but they're in contact that way. But it's just, for some reason, the dynamics of online haven't, in my opinion, evolved to that level where you just are able to do that.
Right. It's just not the same as the personal relationship where you're kind of bantering back and forth and showing them what better looks like and giving positive feedback. Because honestly, how did we all learn in school? We got grades and the teacher gave us feedback. The same way you learn all skills. You aren't the first day you do it, you're not going to be very good, but eventually you will get to be talented. And it just takes a while. And so if you just start thinking about, and also people have to be responsible for managing their own careers. The idea that your boss is going to take care of you is naive, or that if you're just doing a great job, that's enough. You still have to kind of advocate for yourself and remind them on a regular basis. I think once a quarter, all employees should kind of write a note to their boss about here's what I've accomplished this quarter and be proactive, because when you're managing lots of people, sometimes the quiet ones you overlook, even though they're doing a great job. And the ones who are in your face all the time asking for a promotion or whatever are the ones you're paying attention to. And I'm not saying that everybody can be that way, but it doesn't hurt to summarize your own accomplishments, because when you have your quarterly reviews or your year-end review, there'll be things you did in the first quarter you won't even remember anymore, and it's important for you to document them for yourself.
Such a good point. You do have to be your own advocate. And you're right. You can't expect that your boss, like there's a book titled, I think Your Boss Is Not Your Mother. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, but it was something like that. And I think it alluded to that same thing, that, don't expect that your boss is going to look after you in the same way that your parents would. You have to pick yourself up. And if you want to learn something, you have to ask them, would it be possible for me to learn more about this? I'd like to advance in that direction. Like you said, let people know what you've achieved in a nice way, but let them know. Because like you said, people are busy and they're thinking about all the stuff that's bearing down on them and not necessarily aware that you quietly took care of something that actually was very meaningful.
Right. The other thing you could do is also, if you've been in a company for a little while and you like it, ask for a senior person who's a mentor to you, because they will have a different perspective on what's going on at the company overall, and they'll be able to give you some feedback. I think women particularly need that kind of support because may not be getting it at their boss's level, and seeing the world from a different perspective and understanding kind of what drives success and how the pieces come together, and getting more realistic feedback on who you are and what you're able to do is helpful to you, because it's very hard to be better if you don't know what better looks like.
Absolutely. A really good point. I hadn't really thought about that, but you're right. Making that effort to connect with somebody who's higher up, tremendously valuable.
So the world changed, but there are still lots of opportunities out there. And actually, it's a pretty exciting time. And more people are going to work for themselves. And there's nothing that says you have to go work for a big corporation. There's no reason, if entrepreneurial is your bent, that you can't join forces with a few other people and create your own venture. And I'm seeing a lot of people do that as well. And some of them have been quite successful. So I think there's more choices now than there ever used to be. But that also makes it more complex. And sometimes people can get lost in the process and kind of not know where they're going and how to get there.
Absolutely. I think that's really the big problem that a lot of people face, is they just don't know what to do. They're willing to do it, but like you say, it's gotten a lot more complex. A lot of things have changed, and people are just sort of sitting there. It's like sitting in front of your computer and staring at a blank page. And you need to get something written or done, and you're willing to do it. You're sitting there, and you just can't think of what you just can't you can't get it from concept to execution. So I think that a lot of people feel that way. And you've brought so many great things to the table. I've learned a lot listening to you. And I think people who are listening to this podcast and hearing everything that you've shared are just going to walk away with a tremendous amount of golden nuggets from this, Darcy.
Thank you. And if you really are struggling yourself, there are career coaches who have a methodology who can help you kind of walk through and prioritize how you should be spending your time. I think the biggest advantage to a career coach is I probably stop my clients from spending almost 30% of their time is wasted on things that are not useful to them. And sometimes I even say, stop doing this. It's not helpful to you for your mental health, your physical health, or helping you find a job. You would be better off to spend this time going out to lunch with some friends, taking a walk, going to the gym. You need to do things that are productive, and you need to keep a balanced lifestyle when you're job hunting. And so knowing what to do and what not to do is important, so that you're not wasting your time and just sucking your energy out so that you just feel depressed. Because depression is a common side symptom of looking for a job, and most people can get depressed pretty quick. Happens usually at about the 6 to 8 week time frame, and sometimes people can't climb out.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Well, Darcy, you are a phenomenal career coach. I'm going to leave your contact information in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, it will be in the description area. I would really encourage people, if you are looking for a job and you need that support, please reach out to Darcy.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Darcy.